Former President Trump is telling his supporters he is not going to be nice. That is despite the fact that he's called for unity just a week ago at the Republican National Convention. During his rally in North Carolina yesterday, he went after Harris in multiple ways.
Kamala Harris is the most liberal elected politician in American history. Did you know that? She's an ultra-liberal politician.
We're going to turn now to CNN's Elena Treen and Daniel Dale. Elena, tell us more about how Trump is trying to define Harris.
Well, it's really interesting because this, of course, was his first rally since Biden stepped aside over the weekend, and also since Kamala Harris seems like his most likely opponent come this fall. And he really did waste no time going after. He actually spent most of his very lengthy speech last night attacking her. And as you just heard in that soundbite, he tried to paint her as a radical liberal. He nicknamed her Lion Kamala, although he mispronounced her name throughout the entire speech. He's really trying to go after on specific policies, mainly abortion, immigration, and even at times claimed that she was somewhat of a mastermind behind some of Biden's policies. But look, he actually spent, I think, the majority of his attacks focusing on her handling of the border. I want you to take a listen to what he said.
So she was the border czar, but she never went to the border, right? Kamala threw open our borders and allowed 20 million illegal aliens to stampede into our country from all over the world.
Okay, so clearly there are some falsities in there, and that's why we have Daniel here to fact check that in a moment. But I do want to point out a couple things. One is that when I talked to Donald Trump's advisors, they really are trying to figure out, as you mentioned, how are they going to define her? And obviously for the last year or so, they have had an entire playbook built and designed around going after an unpopular 81-year-old. And so now they're trying to figure out exactly the best ways to define Kamala Harris and to attack her. And we really did see that on display last night. And I do think when I talked to his team, they really do want to focus on policy, particularly the areas where Donald Trump, in their eyes, polls better. Things like immigration, as you just heard, and the border, but also inflation and crime. And that's really what they're going to continue trying to do. And he did talk about policy last night, but as we all know, Donald Trump is the only man who actually sets the tone for this. And I am very curious to see how some of this messaging changes in the weeks ahead.
All right. Fact check away, Daniel.
So in those short clips, there were three separate false claims. He said that Vice President Harris has never visited the border. She did go. She went in mid-2021 in Texas. Many Republicans complained before that she had not gone. Then they stopped because she went, but Trump has continued 3 years later. He said she was Joe Biden's border czar. She wasn't. She was never put in charge of the border. She was given a much more limited assignment to lead a so-called root causes diplomatic effort trying to address the reasons in Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras that people choose to migrate. Now, many Republicans scoff at this kind of fact check. They're like, there were a bunch of articles back in 2021 that called her border czar. Frankly, those articles were wrong. And if you look at CNN's own coverage, not to toot our own horn, but you'll see that the White House and Harris's office consistently, as early as early 21, pushed back on that framing. And then Trump also said Harris has allowed 20 million people to stampede in. Aside from the question of her own responsibility, that number is way too high. There have been about 10 million so-called border encounters at the southern border under Biden, and not all of those are individual people. Many of them are attempted repeat crossers. Many of them are immediately expelled. So even if you add in so-called gotaways, people who evaded the Border Patrol, House Republicans say there are a couple million, that doesn't add up to 20 million. It just doesn't.
No, it doesn't. All right. I also wonder sometimes, why not just stick with the facts? If you're dealing with millions, you gotta, that's a big number. Maybe that just do that effectively. All right, let's listen now. This is more from former President Trump talking about Harris.
I will not cut one penny from Social Security or Medicare, and I will not raise the retirement age. One day, I won't even raise it by one day. And you know, they're talking about, she's talking about lifting the retirement age.
And?
She's not talking about lifting the retirement age. I found zero examples of her doing so. Both she and President Biden have, during this administration, strongly opposed proposals, mostly from conservative Republicans, to raise the retirement age. Now, it is true that Biden, decades ago, as late as the 2000s, did support or express openness to raising the age. But as president during this administration, even he has not.
So thin air, just out of thin air.
Yeah, the he part, there's some basis in Biden's past. The part about Harris, though, seems made up.
All right, Elena, Daniel, thank you so much to both of you. We do appreciate that.